conveniently leaves out the manipulation, the cruelty, and the betrayal. They use this emotional bait to blur your sense of clarity. The moment you begin to doubt your memory, you start to entertain their version of events. That sliver of doubt is all they need to squeeze their way back in. Sometimes they evolve their strategy further by imitating the very growth you've undergone. They adopt your language of healing, talking about self-awareness, mindfulness, and personal responsibility. You talk about demise, I was in prison. They echo your phrases and pretend to share your new values, but this is mimicry, not transformation. Their supposed growth is only a mask worn to win your trust. They have not changed. They have studied you. They reflect your light back at you, hoping you will confuse it for their own. But true change is lived, not performed. If they fail to get to you directly, they try to dismantle you socially. They begin to speak behind your back, planting doubts in the minds of others. They twist the truth, sharing fragments of conversations or telling outright lies. Their aim is to control the story that others hear. By the time you learn what's been said, the damage is done. People look at you differently, question your integrity, or withdraw from your life. The narcissist narrative becomes the dominant one, not because it's true, but because it was delivered first and with conviction. And if all else fails, they may resort to emotional collapse as a weapon. They threaten to disappear, to harm themselves, or to fall into ruin. These acts are not cries for help. They are veiled attempts to guilt you into staying. Your sense of responsibility is triggered, and you may feel that walking away would make you heartless. But this is not real despair. It is manipulation dressed as helplessness. They want to make you the guardian of their emotional well-being, so you never leave again. But their survival is not your burden. Their pain is not your prison. Your strength is not the cause of their suffering. It is the reason you finally saw through it. When a narcissist begins to sense that their grip on you is weakening, they often resort to something deceptively tender. They try to recreate the illusion of the good times. This isn't done with loud declarations or grand apologies. It's subtle. They remind you of shared laughter, old routines, and the intimacy that once made you feel seen and loved. They may say they miss the way things used to be, or how special the connection was. It feels sincere because it is rooted in actual moments that held real emotional weight. But the motive behind it is not connection, it is control. They are not honoring the past, but using it as a tool to bring you back into their sphere of influence. They carefully select memories that evoke warmth and familiarity, but they deliberately leave out the pain, the manipulation, and the emotional chaos. They won't mention the nights you cried yourself to sleep, the arguments that left you drained, or the constant feeling of walking on eggshells. Instead, they paint a golden picture of the relationship, one where the highs were eternal and the lows never really happened. This selective storytelling is meant to distort your emotional compass. It makes you question your own experience and softens your resolve to walk away. In these moments, the narcissist may start to mimic vulnerability or express what sounds like regret. They might say things like, "I didn't realize what I had until you were gone," or you should say, you have to compare what it was like when you were all alone. Or, "I've been thinking a lot about us lately." These words are designed to strike the emotional chords that once bonded you. They want to reawaken your hope that maybe this time will be different, that maybe they've truly changed. But beneath the surface, it is a calculated move. They know which version of themselves you once loved, and they're now playing that role again, not out of love, but out of necessity. What makes this tactic so effective is that it doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like nostalgia. It disarms you, not through fear or guilt, but through longing. You find yourself remembering the better moments, the promises made, The dreams you once shared, the heart begins to open slightly, wondering if perhaps the darkness you experienced was an exception, not the rule. And that's when the danger sets in, when you begin to rewrite the past through their lens, not your own. They depend on your emotional memory being softer than your lived reality. It's important to recognize that this is not a gesture of healing, it's a performance, one designed to draw you back into a version of the relationship where they retain power. The moment you begin to trust the illusion, the old patterns quietly return. Control reappears, often cloaked in concern or affection. The push and pull begins again, and soon you're back in the cycle, doubting yourself, managing their moods, and wondering how you got there. The good times were never meant to return. They were bait to distract you from the cost of staying. Often, after evoking this nostalgic dream, they will attempt to accelerate intimacy again. They may suggest rekindling old habits, visiting places you once loved, or having deep emotional talks late into the night. It feels comforting, like rediscovering something lost. But this accelerated connection is not about building something new. It's about bypassing the healing you've begun. It interrupts your clarity, floods you with feeling, and disrupts the distance you've worked so hard to create. The illusion becomes a trap. Beautiful on the surface, hollow underneath. The most painful part of this manipulation is that it uses your own heart against you. The memories were real, but the way they are being used now is not. It's not your longing that's the problem, it's how they exploit it. You're not wrong for remembering the good. You're not weak for missing it. But you must remember the whole picture, not just the part they want you to see. Because if the good times were enough, you never would have had to leave. And if they truly value those moments, they wouldn't need to use them to pull you back. They would have protected them while they had the chance. When a narcissist realizes they can no longer control you in the usual ways, they often turn to a tactic that is both cunning and deeply deceptive. They begin to mimic your personal growth. They observe you closely, your language, your habits, your values, and start to reflect them back as if they had undergone the same transformation. This imitation can feel disarming. Suddenly, the person who once dismissed your emotions, mocked your self-awareness, or violated your boundaries is now speaking about healing, growth, and change. It feels like progress, like maybe they've finally seen the light. But beneath this surface-level shift is a calculated strategy aimed at regaining your trust. This mimicry is not born of genuine introspection or the hard, messy work of inner change. Is a performance, a role they step into once they realize that your evolution has made the old tactics ineffective. You have grown stronger, more centered, and more aware, and that makes you less susceptible to their previous manipulations. So instead of fighting your strength, they attempt to mirror it, not because they value it, but because they believe it will give them access to you once again. They learn the vocabulary of healing, but not the essence. They begin to talk about accountability, often using the same phrases you once used in the midst of your own growth. They may speak about emotional intelligence, trauma healing, or even boundaries. But these are not commitments. They are rehearsed lines, borrowed from your own script. They say the right things, not because they believe them, but because they know you do. It's an echo, not a transformation. And while it may sound convincing, something in your gut will feel off, like watching someone wear your skin. This illusion of shared growth can be particularly dangerous because it plays directly into your hope. Hope that they finally understand that all the pain had a purpose, that maybe love and effort were not wasted. They may even suggest that now, with their newfound awareness, the relationship can work in a healthier way. It's seductive because it offers the one thing you've always wanted, to be met where you are. But instead of being met, you're being studied. Instead of being honored, your healing is being used as a blueprint for control. If you stay in the connection at this stage, you might begin to notice small cracks in the performance. They speak the language of growth, but their actions still carry the same underlying motives. There is still defensiveness when questioned, still avoidance of deep accountability, still manipulation when their image is threatened. The growth is surface level, conditional, and often short-lived. The moment they feel safe in your forgiveness, the mask begins to slip. What seemed like change reveals itself as strategy. The more dangerous aspect of this behavior is how it makes you question your own instincts. If you bring up your concerns, they may accuse you of being unforgiving or claim that you're stuck in the past. They turn your desire for discernment into a flaw, making you feel like the one who hasn't evolved. You start doubting your intuition, your clarity, your judgment. You wonder if maybe you're being too harsh, too skeptical, too resistant to growth. But in reality, your hesitation is not mistrust. It's wisdom trying to protect you. True growth does not mimic someone else's journey. It is lived, embodied, and slow. It requires humility, time, and deep self-reflection. A narcissist does not do this work. They simulate it to manipulate. And the most painful part is not that they are pretending, it's that they're using the best parts of you to keep you stuck. The very words that once set you free are now being used to trap you again. Recognizing the difference between imitation and transformation is not cruelty. It is the boundary that keeps you whole. When a narcissist can no longer control or influence you, they often take a different route to maintain their sense of superiority and emotional dominance. They quickly find someone else to replace you. Someone else, but this replacement is not about love, connection, or even companionship. It is a performance designed to show you and others that they were never at a loss, that they were the ones who truly moved on first. This new person becomes a tool, a prop in their ongoing narrative. The narcissist does not seek healing or closure. They seek validation, attention, and power. And by publicly displaying a new bond, they try to prove their worth while questioning yours. The speed at which they do this can be shocking. One moment they are pleading, reminiscing, or pretending to grow, and the next they are completely immersed in a new relationship that looks eerily familiar. This sudden switch often isn't a coincidence. It is premeditated. Narcissists frequently line up new sources of admiration before the old ones fully break away. It's less about emotional connection and more about securing a fresh supply of validation. The new person becomes a mirror through which the narcissist can continue to see themselves as important, wanted, and adored. This replacement is also part of a larger plan to distort your sense of reality. The narcissist will often flaunt the new relationship, not just to move on, but to provoke you. They want you to feel confused, rejected, and insignificant. They want you to question whether you ever mattered to them. The message is silent but powerful. Look how quickly I found better. The goal is to undermine your sense of self-worth, to chip away at the confidence you've been building since stepping away from the toxic dynamic. Their new relationship becomes a tool of psychological warfare, not a step toward emotional maturity. In some cases, they may go even further, creating a false narrative around the new person being everything you were not. They might say they've finally found peace, real love, or someone who truly understands them. These words are designed to reach you even if they are not said directly. The narcissist wants you to hear about their happiness and feel the sting of being replaced. They build up the new person not because they believe it, but because it serves the story they want the world to believe. That they were the one who was mistreated, that they've now found redemption in someone else. The new person is often unaware of their role in this drama. They're typically charmed, idealized, and love-bombed in the same way you once were. They're fed the same lines, given the same attention, and promised the same future. What they don't realize is that they are not loved for who they are, but for how well they can fulfill a function. Once they start asking questions, setting boundaries, or becoming less useful in the narcissist emotional economy, the cycle will likely begin again. The pattern isn't new, it's just being repeated with a different person. Seeing this unfold can be deeply painful. You may feel like everything you shared was disposable, like you were never truly seen or appreciated. But that pain is not a reflection of your value, it is a reflection of the narcissist's inability to form authentic bonds. You were real, the love you gave was real, the memories you carry are valid, even if they are now being rewritten by someone else's illusion. What they choose to display to the world says more about their emptiness than your worth. Their rush to replace you is not a victory, it's a confession. The truth is, no one can replace you. They may imitate your presence, copy your energy, or recreate your role, but what you brought into that connection came from a place they cannot reach. Authenticity, empathy, and depth. The narcissist doesn't replace you because you were not enough. They replace you because they are never enough on their own. Their life is built on appearances. And when your strengths expose their weakness, they needed someone new to mask it. Let them go. Let the illusion play out. The only thing that was ever false was the role you were forced to play in their story. When a narcissist feels their control over you slipping away, they often resort to one of the most cruel and calculated tactics available to them. They trigger your deepest emotional wounds, particularly the wound of abandonment. This is not accidental. Narcissists are extremely perceptive when it comes to identifying your emotional vulnerabilities. Over time, they observe what makes you anxious, what hurts you the most, and where your childhood pain still lingers. When they see that you are growing stronger or creating distance, they reach for the most painful part of you, the fear of being left, discarded, or deemed unworthy, and they press on it without hesitation. They will often do this suddenly and without explanation. One day they are present, engaged, and affectionate. The next, they go completely silent. They may stop responding to messages, ignore your calls, or physically disappear from your life. This abrupt withdrawal is intentional. It's not a need for space, it's a tactic meant to destabilize you. It activates your fear of being forgotten, of not being enough, of losing the bond you thought was real. In that panic, they expect you to chase them, to beg for clarity, and to abandon your own boundaries just to re-establish contact. This kind of psychological abandonment is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle and quiet. They begin to detach emotionally, speak to you with coldness, or offer vague explanations that make you feel like the problem. You're left in confusion, trying to piece together what went wrong. This silence and ambiguity keep you locked in a state of anxiety, questioning whether you did something to deserve the sudden shift. It's a form of punishment, but more than that, it's a form of psychological control. You become obsessed with fixing something you didn't break. What makes this tactic especially painful is how it mirrors past trauma. If you've ever felt unwanted, abandoned, or invisible in earlier parts of your life, especially during childhood, this behavior pulls those old wounds wide open. The narcissist is not just creating a new injury, they are dragging you back into an emotional state that feels deeply familiar. It becomes hard to separate the past from the present. You don't just feel rejected by them, you feel rejected by everyone you've ever loved. That emotional flood is overwhelming, and the narcissist counts on it to keep you disoriented. When you reach out to them during this phase, they may respond in ways that further the damage. They might blame you, accuse you of being too sensitive, or act as if nothing happened at all. This inconsistency adds to your confusion and self-doubt. You begin to question whether your feelings are valid, whether your expectations are too high, or whether you're the one sabotaging the relationship. The longer you stay in this state of uncertainty, the more control they regain. They don't need to be present to dominate your mind. In their absence, they are still pulling the strings. Eventually, they may return with kindness or affection, acting as though nothing was wrong. This sudden return is not a resolution, it's reinforcement. It teaches you that if you endure the emotional abandonment and suppress your needs, they will come back. This creates a painful cycle of waiting, hoping, and tolerating mistreatment in exchange for temporary relief. Your nervous system becomes conditioned to this pattern, confusing chaos with connection and inconsistency with intimacy. What feels like love is actually trauma repeating itself through a familiar rhythm. Breaking free from this manipulation requires more than physical distance. It requires emotional awareness. You must begin to see that their abandonment does not define your worth. Their sudden silence is not a reflection of your value, but a tactic to control your emotions. The wound they trigger is real, but it existed long before they arrived. Healing means tending to that original pain, understanding its roots, and refusing to let someone else exploit it again. Your strength lies in your ability to stay grounded in the truth of who you are, even when someone tries to make you forget. When a narcissist realizes they can no longer dominate you emotionally, they don't always walk away. They double down by targeting the very core of who you are. They move beyond manipulating your feelings or behaviors and begin working to dismantle your identity. This tactic is subtle but deeply damaging. They question your beliefs, mock your values, and belittle the things that make you feel alive and purposeful. What they aim to do is shake your confidence from within. They want you to feel unsure, lost, and dependent once again, not on their affection, but on their approval and perception of who you are. They often start by planting small doubts. They may ridicule your career, your talents, or the things you're passionate about. If you're proud of your achievements, they'll call you arrogant. If you show vulnerability, they'll label you weak. Over time, these criticisms aren't just about behaviors. They're about identity. You begin to second guess what you once knew to be true about yourself. You question your choices, your path, and even your character. And this is exactly what the narcissist wants. For you to no longer trust your own sense of self. In conversations, they may subtly correct you, undermine your knowledge, or dismiss your opinions as uninformed or naive. These jabs are often disguised as concern or humor, making it difficult to call them out without appearing overly sensitive. They speak with authority, even on topics they know little about, because it's not the facts they're interested in, it's the impact of their voice overpowering yours. The goal isn't clarity or growth, it's domination through confusion. They want you to feel like your identity only has value when it aligns with their expectations. This psychological erosion doesn't happen overnight. It builds gradually, like water dripping on stone. At first you may feel defensive or annoyed, but eventually you might start agreeing with them. You think, maybe I'm not that good at this, or maybe I do overreact. You begin editing yourself in their presence, walking on eggshells, trying to avoid their disdain. In doing so, you slowly abandon the parts of yourself that once made you whole. You become a version of yourself tailored to their comfort, less bold, less expressive, less authentic. What makes this tactic so dangerous is that it's not loud or violent. It's quiet, continuous, and psychologically invasive. You can't point to a single moment when everything changed, because the change is cumulative. It's a slow disconnection from your own sense of reality. Friends or loved ones may start to notice you're not yourself. that you seem withdrawn or unsure, but on the inside you might feel that you're just trying to keep the peace or be better. In reality, you are being dismantled piece by piece by someone who feels threatened by your independence. The narcissist needs you to doubt yourself because your certainty exposes their own lack of substance. Your clarity, your values, and your authenticity are mirrors that reflect back what they are missing. Rather than face their own emptiness, they try to fill it with control over your identity. If they can reshape how you see yourself, then they can feel superior without ever having to grow. It's not just about winning an argument or getting the last word. It's about rewriting who you believe you are so they remain at the center of your world. Reclaiming your identity after this kind of manipulation requires patience and conscious effort. You must begin to separate your inner voice from there. Notice when you hear self-doubt, ask yourself, is this truly mine or was it planted? Begin reconnecting with the people, places and passions that made you feel alive before their influence. Trust in your right to take up space, to speak your truth, and to live in alignment with your values. The narcissist tried to collapse your identity because they could not control your spirit. Your path back to yourself is the very proof that they never truly succeeded.